All right. Hello everyone, and welcome to stream. We're good today. It seems as though the connection is working completely fine today. Knock on wood that everything will be perfectly fine today. Hello everyone, welcome in. I'm commissioning you, excited for your art, very hyper, so ignore me, you're all good. Thank you so much. No way. Without the wonkiness, yeah, right? It's like hello everybody. I hope you're all doing well. How are you all doing today? How's the energy? How's the vibe? What are we feeling? How's our weekend been so far? As in the one Saturday that the weekend has been. For those of you on this hemisphere, I suppose. Setting good vibes for a stream today. How are you doing? I'm just tired, but like, I mean, that's just because I taught 2 classes, so like, but also just my general mood is being tired, so. I'm doing alright though. Overall though. Speedrunning art fight ref sheets, fun. Spent 2 hours looking for references, gonna make something big, that's epic. Love to see it. Laying in bed because I'm sick? No! Get soup. Suspended for volunteering for a few weeks? Oi, okay. I'm sorry. Can't miss this stream. I'm glad you're here, Starvers. Hello everybody, welcome in. As the stream title says today, we are going to be fixing some backgrounds, which were pre-submitted. So for those of you who are like, where can I submit my work? You're too late! Points at you. We're too late. You're too late. You have missed the deadline. The deadline has been reached already. I have chosen all of the work already. So, if you could see all the tabs up at the top there, those are all of the pieces that I have picked for today. They're going to be going over 6, so each person gets about 20 minutes each, give or take. But we will be doing that today. But alright, before we get started, also because this is a crit stream, I'm not really going to go over any of the featured art that's in the Discord today, but Iggy will probably be going over that tomorrow anyway, so be sure to submit over there regardless, but today, you know, we still have our drills, if you didn't know. Our growing community is filled with tons of art nerds, and we art nerds have to stick together, so if you're an art nerd too, be sure to check the links to our social media in the description below, and check out our website for our class offerings, where you can get critique, guidance, and encouragement for our instructors, because we're not just a YouTube channel, we are a school of illustration. I also want to personally thank our incredible Patreon and YouTube members who support us in making free art education content. Members get access to tons of perks like exclusive chats with our creators, weekly live critiques on Discord, class recordings, digital art working files from our streams, and discounts on live programs that have a limited amount of spots. So if you want to help support the channel or accelerate your learning, consider becoming a member. Alright, cool and epic. Cool and awesome. I have a newfound love for backgrounds and designing spaces and imagining the lives of the people who live there. I feel like I'm telling a story. That is visual language, my friend. That's the best part about backgrounds. I was making all the little details. It's the best part. Hi, Kay. Jessica Television. Yeah, that's me. Hi, Kay. How are you? Okay, I don't want to waste too much time floundering about. So let's get to the first piece here. Alright, don't need to save this. This first one is by Emi. His Instagram is EmiDrawsCardArt. EmiDrawsCardArt on Instagram. Check out the artists when they are featured. Oh, I didn't click the tab. There we go. I was like, why isn't it changing over? I'm like, I didn't click it. That's why. But yes, this first one is by Emi, he, him. EmiDrawsCardArt on Instagram. This is such a cool style. Like, I saw this one. Oh, it's a little low res. No. I saw this one and like, I saw this person's work. I was like, okay, pop off. This style is so fun. Color reminds me of Hilda. I was actually thinking that it kind of reminds me of a CMS video. If you've ever watched one of those, like, music videos, kind of feels the same way as that, or like a Caravan Palace, an earlier Caravan Palace video. I love this. Who is this? I didn't hear. It is Emi. His name is Emi. EmiDrawsCardArt on Instagram. Go take a look. It's like a medieval tavern. Yeah, I think the original file name was called like a cat tavern or something like that. Like a tavern of some kind. I am loving these, I'll start off by saying just, also, this is a crit stream, not a roasting stream, so I'm gonna be a lot nicer. But I am loving this, like, really simple, like, shading line work balance. I think this is so, so cool. And, like, the simplicity of the colors really lends well to the simplicity of the lines as well, and I think it is a very, very strong coloring style. These colors are so bold, and it's like, essentially, he's only really picked, like, 2 colors, really. It's orange and blue. And that's it. Like, that's all that we have in here, really. But it works so well together. You create this really nice complementary palette by working with such a limited color palette. And it's so effective. It's so, so cool. Trees look really cool, give me Adventure Time vibes, and I love it. Again, like, I'm feeling like, oh, there's a game I started playing recently called Sable, and it kind of gives me the same vibes as this. Not necessarily, like, the style itself, but, like, the colors used and, like, the line work simplicity and stuff like that. It gives, like, the same background are you going to draw? I'm not drawing a background today. Today is a background critique, so I am going to be looking at other people's backgrounds and critiquing them. Tell you the shading on the trees ain't purple. There isn't really any shading on the trees. There's just these lines here. Here's the deal, though. It's like what isn't there another color here? Here's the deal, is what is happening here is essentially there are, like, 2 forms of shading. There is this black, quote-unquote, shading, and there is these, like, slight halftone shadows that are going on here. But these black shadows are the same color as our line art. So what it does, it creates this almost, like, 2-toned effect. Even though this isn't a pure black, this is essentially a really dark purple. It becomes our new black, quote-unquote. It is our darkest hue on this entire palette. All of the really, really dark sections are this exact same purple. It is because he's chosen this to be his new darkest value, right? And that's a really, really cool way of working. 3 values, rah! Yeah! How many crits am I doing today? I'm doing 6. Just wish I was good at choosing colors. We have older color palette videos. I think we're doing a color theory stream at some point in the summer, I think. I don't know exactly the schedule. But okay, this is a crit, so I want to get into the crit parts as well today. Now, a really, really big thing. I love this composition. I think it could be a little bit better. So when we are working with backgrounds, or any kind of composition in general, right? Oh, I should have just, here, this is easier. When we are compositing, right? Big thing that we want to think about, right? It doesn't always have to be rule of thirds, but it really helps, is we think of these little dots here, right? If you, in Photoshop, what I can do is I can just use the cropping tool and it brings up a perfect, like, 3x3 grid. And these points that you see on this 3x3 grid are like rule of thirds points, right? It's where we want our main focal point to be. Now, if we put our main focal point on all of these points, then this thing is directly in the center. And it could be better if it wasn't directly in the center. So, another thing that we could really easily do is to shift it over to 1 or 2 of these other points. So if I just went like this, we could do that to give it a more right justified composition, or if we cropped it like this, I'm sorry, I'm getting rid of this wall, but if we cropped it like this gives us a slightly better composition as well, just because now our main focal point, this tavern, is on the left side points. Now, why is this considered the better composition? And the main reason being that we have a lot of right energy going on here. All right, we have a lot of right side energy. What I mean by right side energy is if we take a look at, if we take a look at our leading lines, if we take a look at where things are pointing, quote unquote, we have more things pointing to the right than we do to the left, right? You notice how it feels a little more awkward if we close this side in by comparison to if we close this side in, right? And the reason for that is because we have this pathway going this way, and we have this tavern and all of its other various little bits and bobs pointing this way as well, along with this sign, which is also facing in this direction, right? A similar idea can be applied to when we draw people, right? If you've ever noticed, like, if we have somebody, right, if we have a little composition, right, and our character is our main focus, if we have the character facing this way, like they're looking in this direction, we automatically want to make, like, this side of the composition more empty by comparison to this one, right? And that is because we have more energy going towards this side, so it almost opens up the canvas in that direction, right? So it is a very similar idea when it comes to backgrounds, when it comes to just elements within our background. Because of all of this energy pointing in this direction, we want to leave room for this we want to leave room for this background to breathe, essentially, right? And it's kind of funny because even though this isn't necessarily a tangent, it's almost like we're not leaving much breathing room on this side. It's almost like it is being choked, even though technically it's not. Alright. So that's a really interesting first immediate thing that I kind of saw with this one. I think the second thing that I would say, I love this piece to death. I think this is really, really cool. But I think the second thing that I would do, right, if I did something really cool and epic really quickly, let's just, whoops, let's break this out a little bit more over here. And the funny thing is that you had the person who drew this, what they did is they did have like a more like rule of thirds following kind of composition with one of the other pieces that they submitted that I also really liked, but I picked this one because there was more for me to pick out. With this one, I was like, genuinely, I was like, the other one, I'm like, I have nothing to say about this one. Let's take this for a second. Does the lighting also affect the composition, like this example, how the shadow was on the left side? For sure, because the shadow on the left side is what tells us that this side is the one that is like the front-facing, quote-unquote, side, right? The sun is pointing towards this section. Good point. Good eye. All right, let's take some of these lines here. Very nice. This is a very, very sharply accurate perspective. Very good. So our horizon line is down here, probably. Woo! Sorry, that was kind of intense. This is our first vanishing point, so our horizon line is probably here. Our first vanishing point is here. And then the second one... Okay. Interesting. So while this side of the house is a little more accurately to one vanishing point, this one isn't, right? We can kind of see these edges of the house are going to one side in particular, but these ones are not. They're a bit going to an edge over here, right? The more advanced way of thinking about perspective is that technically, right? Every object has its own perspective, which is a very, very advanced concept, right? So is this technically wrong? No, right? However, it can be more enhanced if we had all of these edges like going to a singular point. Right, let's try and, right, because this is, oh, actually, did I just trace it wrong? I might have just traced it wrong. I might have just done it wrong. Except for this point. This point, for some reason, this edge of the house is going bananas. It's like going over here, whereas this one is over here. Right? It's almost like you have two vanishing points there. which again, you know, not necessarily incorrect. However, you know, it could be more correct. The biggest thing, right? We have one vanishing point over here, right? We have another vanishing point maybe at the edge over here, and then one within the canvas. Now, usually when we do backgrounds of some kind, anything above 1 point perspective, you want that point to be outside of the canvas. You want it gone. You want it somewhere outside of the canvas, very, very far. Because when we draw our perspective, right, let's say we do 2 point perspective, right? If we pick our canvas, our horizon line, right? If we draw both of our vanishing points in here, if you kind of notice, right, if you've ever done perspective, right, if you kind of notice when you draw your 2 vanishing points and you start to draw things getting really close to an edge, if you start to draw items kind of far away, right, if you notice, they might start to do this kind of thing, right, where they start to look a little bit weird, and you're like, well, this is the perspective, I kind of have to draw it like this, right? That is because you are outside of an area, an invisible area, where things aren't distorted, and that size is like here, right? It's like that's about as much like leeway you can give yourself within this circle where you can draw things in the background and they don't get distorted, right? So if you have both of your vanishing points inside of your canvas, that distortion is going to happen, right? Like again, if I was to draw like a box like here, right? We have one side of the building that's like, it's starting to ride up really high here to start to look a bit strange, right? So we generally want to keep our objects within this. So the smartest thing to do is if you have your 2 vanishing points and the horizon line, you want to keep your entire canvas within that one area where nothing will get distorted. Counterpoint distortion is cool. It looks cool in a lot of, in like more experimental ways. I think if you are trying to do a background that is more like for concept art, you don't want that to happen. Like if you are doing like a proper, like an illustration where you're like, oh, I want to make this like go crazy, right? That's like fine. Like I love distortion if I'm doing like a 4-point illustration. But if you're doing like a concept work piece, like that distortion ends up making your piece look very amateurish. So it depends on the kind of piece that you are going for. That's what I've been missing. Yeah, that's a it's a very common thing that people don't understand. So with this house specifically, this person has actually completely avoided making this house look distorted. But if we were going to take other pieces of here and like put those in perspective, they would start to get distorted the farther out you got, right? So be very, very careful with that. But otherwise though, I'm like, I think that this is pretty good. I'm like, I think like having this one object in here that is very driven by perspective and nothing else being driven by perspective is a very smart tactic, so you don't have to draw more things, but B, I think it could be stronger if you had more around here that lended to the perspective. So maybe if you had like this is a tavern, so maybe you want like to put like it might be cool if you put in like if you put in like a stable of some kind here, maybe like if you wanted like some kind of stables, maybe you had like a horse-drawn carriage that's coming up around here, right? Really set the scene, because right now this is kind of just a tavern in a really empty area, right? I think we could put in like, I think we can really help this setting come to life more by adding in just a little bit more, right? Maybe there's like another building over here, like maybe this is a town, like maybe it's meant to be empty, like maybe we're supposed to be like, this is kind of a weird mysterious tavern that is just in the middle of nowhere for some reason, right? But I think like if we wanted to enhance this kind of town feeling almost, maybe adding a little bit more, like a couple more buildings or something might help with that. I think it would help make it feel a little bit more strong as an area. I think that would help a bit. It's just like sort of to build up this area's story and build up this visual language so that we get more out of this background than just a building in the middle of nowhere. But all right. How do you add detail? That is visual language. So that is up to you. And what visual language is it is all about like trying to tell a visual storytelling. Sorry. It is all about trying to tell a story with nothing but visuals, right? So think about the area that you are drawing. What are other things you might see in there? What are things that you want to tell the viewer without telling them, right? Maybe this is a tavern for cats, right? So maybe you want to draw more cat people. Maybe you want, like, instead of an outhouse, you draw like a litter box house or whatever. Maybe they're like, you know, like there's a trash can and it's filled with like fish bones or whatever, right? And this tells you this is a very cat-driven area, right? So adding in all those little extra details that people can pick apart will add to the visual storytelling of the area. All right. But that's about as much as I have to say about this one. Everybody say thank you to Emmy. I don't know if he's here. I don't think he is. Everybody say thank you to Emmy. Say thank you for being brave and thank you for submitting your work because this is beautiful. The other pieces that he submitted were also beautiful. So everybody say thank you, artist, for submitting. And we will move on to the next individual. Okay. Next person that we will be going over is named Waffles. His name is Waffles. On Discord, his name is Waffleson45. Right? But this is our next person. His name is Waffles. Waffleson45. And he did mention that he has never done background work before, and that's totally fine. We're gonna give him some tips. Especially this, I think this piece is perfect for people who are in chat who I keep saying, it's like, I'm a beginner to background art, I don't know what to do. Fantastic. Looks like he is too. And that's totally fine. We all start somewhere. So let's get into drawing a night scene. Now, night scenes are very, very complicated for people if you've never done it before. And that is just because night and just general working in an area that is meant to be dark requires you to have a pretty good understanding of how color theory works. Now, night, right, is not just you're going to take the color and lower the saturation, right? Because that is not how color works. Oh, sorry, let me discipline my Tamagotchi. My son. There we go. He was putting up a fuss. Never speak to me or my Tamagotchi son ever again. Alright. With color, a lot of the times, right, might pick this color, right? Look at that, all the way over to the right. Now, most of the time, we actually don't want that, because if we have the color all the way over to the right, that's going to look pretty radioactive. So let's say we started with a green for our grass. Trust me when I say your green looks better if you kind of make it duller and push it towards yellow, right? This kind of makes our green look a little bit nicer, right? Let's say we have our grass that is this color. Yes, night is not the absence of light. The light just gets dimmer and cooler. So generally, right, when we draw at night, right, usually what I like to do is just apply like a darker blue kind of like thing to it, right? Because our light tends to be a bit cooler as we get deeper in the night. Our shadows become more and more apparent, right? So let's say that we want to make this green nightified, right? Let's kind of put it in darkness here. Obviously, we're not going to use the same green because it's going to be way too bright, but we also don't just want to push it downwards like this because this feels A, dull, and B, just generally not how color would react in a darker sort of sense, right? So let's say that I wanted to apply like a cool toned shadow, right? Let's say that I wanted this to be in like a cooler shadow, right? So if I was to take this color, make it into a wheel for me, right? If I was to take this green, right? This green that is very yellow based, right? We know what our cool colors are. We know what our warm tones are, right? So I think, like, I sort of understand in the back of my brain what is the quickest way or what is a fast way to get towards the cool tones. Which direction leads me to the cool tones faster? And in this case, the answer is going to the left towards the green and the cyan, because the cyan is where my cold is. If I continue this way, I get warmer instantly. So from this original green, I'm going to start to push it towards the cyan. And then I'm also going to make it darker and colder. This way, this green feels like it is much nicer under the effects of a dark night sky. Right? If I was to pull this one out here, right, it looks way darker outside of the effects of black, but within like a black undertone, within like a black background, right, this looks a lot brighter, right, because this is as dark as a value as you can get. This is called Chevreul's rule of color interaction, and this changes how our color looks based on what colors it's quote-unquote interacting with. Artist in chat! Oh, I see artist in chat. Everyone point. Artist in chat. Everybody point. Say that they are perceived. Hello, artist. Welcome in. Welcome in, Waffles. I hope you're doing well. Or would you prefer Ryan? Because that is what I'm seeing in chat right now. Perceived. You've been perceived. Hello, artist in chat. We are currently talking about the colors of your piece. But yes, generally, we do not want to just take the color and make it darker. We want to take the color and adjust it for the area that we are putting it in. And that takes into effect the light, and that takes into the surroundings as well. So in this case, right, we are making this original green a cooler tone and darkening it as well, right? Chevreul's rule of color interaction just says that colors will look different depending on the scene that we are looking at, right? So let's do that to everything. If we were going to turn these into more natural tones, right? Ooh, let's make this a 20 instead. There we go, right? Let's turn this into a less radioactive green. Let's turn it to that cool tone. Immediately feels a lot better, right? Just basically based on changing that. Same deal with this blue, right? This blue all the way to the right. Usually we don't want that. And if we look at water, let's look at pictures of a lake. Look at a more natural picture of a lake, please. Not ones that have the saturation turned up to 5 bajillion, right? If we look at, like, a lake, right? This blue, the color, right? This was actually originally brighter, and I attempted to darken it. Right, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make these colors just a little bit more natural, right? Right, if we take the colors of, like, lake water, right? Very rarely is it ever like that perfect blue, right? More often than not, it's actually reflecting stuff, but we're looking at it at night. So lake at night, right? Very rarely is it ever that perfect blue. It is usually reflecting the sky if it is that kind of perfect blue. And if it is more a dark color, right, if we are working with black, then that lake water is also going to actually be black. So we might actually want to do is change this lake color to not a blue, but more of a darker kind of black. If that is the color of the sky, then we are working with that because that is the reflection that we are getting, right? If it is really that dark in the sky, then we probably want that too. But if we don't want it to be that dark, then we can change the hue of our sky. Oopsie doopsie. Oh, I see. We can change the hue of our sky to maybe make that a sort of darker, kind of more saturated blue. And then that way we can make our lake more of that blue, but we don't want it to be as saturated because it is just a reflection. And again, same deal with these bricks here, right? This little stone pathway. Now we have this little stone pathway going down here, and if this is what it looks like in the dark, then in the daytime it's probably going to be something like that, which we probably don't want. So once again, let's take accounting. If we wanted them to be like this kind of bricky, dark gray, once again, let's account for it as if it is in a very, very dark area.
if we are applying a cool toned shadow to this, we are going to turn this into a cool toned gray. And what that essentially just means is we are going to pick the color, right? We're going to go darker and then a little bit to the right, and that gives it a bluer sort of tone. We can even make it darker if we wanted to do that, right? Outside there, this is a really dark looking gray if we took it outside of the black, but within the black, again, can't get any darker than black. So this still looks like a much lighter color, but they kind of look the same if you put them next to each other. But if you let them touch each other, they look like very, very different grays. So let's once again do that. Oh, it's kind of funny because like the this is not letting me do this properly. So let's adjust this as well. Right, so this feels a little bit more convincing as a darker pathway. And usually when we draw the moon and the stars, don't really want them yellow. We can have them slightly yellow toned, but it might look a little bit better as like a whitish, right? Maybe not perfect white, but it might look a little bit better as like a whitish sort of tone. All right, lovely artists in chat. What was our focal point? What was the main thing that we wanted to have this piece focus on? Was it our bridge here or was it the moon? In dark environments, how would differentiating color values work then? You're just essentially like, let's say we have like white. If we are darkening that white, let's just use it with a multiply. Let me demonstrate with a multiply layer. Because I'm doing this without a multiply layer. Let's do it with one, just so you can see that. So let's say we have white, we have yellow, which I would actually make more like that. Let's say we have yellow. Let's say we have this kind of green here, and let's say that we've got a dark blue. Now let's say I wanted to apply a shadow to this. All right, let's say I wanted to apply a kind of cool toned shadow to this. Let's add this multiply layer, right? And you can see this is essentially how all of these colors would look under shadow. Now notice how different colors of different values are affected by this shadow, right? White is as light a value as you can get, so it is affected by the value shift the most. It is affected by the shadow the most. Right? Second most is yellow because it is also a very, very light value. Green is affected, but not as much as white or yellow, and this blue is really not affected at all, right? And that is just because, right, if we imagine a value scale, say we got a value scale going here. Hello? Oh, I got him. Let's say we've got a value scale going here. Black is as dark a value as we can get. White is as light a value as we can get. This original blue is kind of sitting right here on the value scale, right? It's kind of around here on the value scale, right? It can get lighter a lot easier, but there isn't much, like, it can't get too much darker, right? So trying to apply a shadow to it is kind of complicated because it can't get much darker than its local value. By comparison to white, you can get darker than white really easily because it is as light as you can get, right? It's why, more often than not, artists will say, hey, don't use black in your piece, because by using black, it is quite literally a color killer because it's the absence of value. If you add any hue to white or black, you instantly make it something that is not white or black, right? So you are either making it lighter or you are making it darker. So that's why that previous piece was quite smart by using purple as its new darkest color, because, you know, it is not actually the darkest value. So it makes stuff look a little bit more colorful, a little bit more filled out, right? The bridge was the focus, little pier, I call it. Cute! So, let's say I was going to crop this in here. right? Very nice. We've put this little pier on our focal point. But what's happening here is you have other elements that we are looking at that are taking up more attention, right? This moon, even without the color adjustments that I did, is taking up more attention than this bridge because of the values, right? So we need to draw more attention to this bridge. Really easy ways that we could do that, right? Couple of things that we could do is if we wanted to make this little bridge our main focus of attention, we could do this little pier, our main focus of attention. Two things that we could do. One is have it bigger. So let's say we have this 3x3 grid here. Let's say let's make it bigger, right? Let's have our big pier. Let's have our pier no longer be a little pier and have it be a big pier. And let's put it in this corner instead. So we have our focus on the pier here. Oh gosh. Let's have our focus be like here. Maybe the edge of the beach is here, and we can have our stones going here. And then with this, maybe we have the edge like right here. We can have two kind of focal points. If we have our moon over here, and then we could put our stars in the sky like this, right? That's one way we could do it if we wanted it to be like that. You wanted it to be really, really simple. We could have our two focal points, so we could have one being the pier and another being the moon. I actually might extend this a little bit, if that's what we're going for. Yeah. So we have one focal point up here, one focal point down here. If we wanted to do that, right? We could have it so our pier is one focal point and our moon is another. Or we could really enhance our leading lines and have everything point towards the pier. This liner bit was bad. Yeah, it's I chose without the liner because I thought without the liner was a little bit better. Your example was more of what I had in my head. That's okay. Sometimes, especially if we're just starting out, things are complicated. So that's all good. This is great for a first try. I'll show you one of my earliest backgrounds just to compare, just so we can share in the in the slight cringe we might be feeling. But that's okay. It's like, especially if we're just starting out, that is completely fine. Right? But there's another way that we could do this, is having all of our leading lines point towards our main focus, right? And if we want all of our focus on this bridge, we actually can't have the moon in there. So let's break this up into 3 again, right? And let's change the perspective entirely, right? Let's have this as a top-down, because I think those are fun, right? And let's say we have our little pier over here. And let's say we have, like, the edges of the beach kind of coming up towards the edge of this little pier. Let's have some ripples also kind of pointing towards our pier. And then we can have our stone pathway also heading towards our pier, right? And this way we have so many different elements pointing towards this bridge, you cannot miss it. Like, it is like the main thing that you are going to be looking at now, right? I really like top-down perspectives. I think they're cool, right? In this way, we are really, really focusing in on this one little bridge, and we have so many different elements that are pointing towards it. But yeah. Here, I'll pull up one of my earliest backgrounds if I still have it around. If I still have them around, I should. Let's see here. What can I yank out of the old crevasse? Did I move them to my external hard drive? I might have moved my, like, earliest ones to my hard drive. I hope not. Come on, sort for me. Oh, no, here we go. Oh, no, it disappeared. Oh, that's okay. That means I can just go find it there. There we go. Want to see something awesome? You guys want to see something really epic? There we go. Boom. Isn't that sick? 2014. You see that date? 2014. That's awesome. But yeah, this is one of my earliest backgrounds, so just to give you a difference, right? There's one of my earliest backgrounds, right? Let me pull up one of my more recent backgrounds just to give you a difference. I actually might be better if I go into my commissions folder. So sick, right? Here's one of my earliest backgrounds, and like this is one that I did last year, right? Very different, right? I still think I could have done better with this one, but there's always room for improvement, right? We always have room to improve, I think. And that is, like, you know, the nature of working. Oh, here, this is one that I like more, right? There we go. This one I like a little bit more, right? The difference, right? What a difference 9 years can make, right? Right? We all start somewhere, and we get a lot better as time goes on. I think the composition of this one could have been better if I just cropped this in a little bit more right here. Yeah, there we go. That feels a lot stronger. But yeah, right? We get better. as we get more into art. All right, so everybody clap. Thank you to Waffles. Thank you for submitting. Thank you for being brave. Everybody point at artist in chat. Everybody point and say thank you for submitting. Thank you for being brave, and thank you for letting us look at your lovely work. All right, yeah, everybody say good job. Everybody says thank you. All right, again, that is Waffles. Discord Waffleson45. Thank you so much for submitting. Thanks, Doretta got a huge smile. I'm glad you did. I thank you so much for submitting your work. Alright, moving on. For our next artist here, this is Julie. She submitted her work. She didn't give me a handle where you could all go and point at her artwork, but Julie, thank you so much for submitting. This is lovely. I love Splatoon. I was actually talking with my students earlier today about Splatoon exclamation point classes. We were talking about how cool, how like culturally like aware Splatoon is, and I think that that's really fun. Splatoon mentioned, so true. I love this piece. Beautiful work. I love the atmosphere. Love everything about it. I think it is so fun. Oh, that's why artist in chat. Another artist in chat. Everyone point. Everybody point. Artist in chat is right there. Oh my god, that's mine. Yeah, there you go. Artist in chat too. Everybody point. Say perceived. Everybody point and artist in chat and say perceived. Alright. Artist in chat. Thank you so much for submitting. This is a lovely one. Inkling artist noticed. This is a lovely one. Thank you so much for submitting. All right. The biggest thing that I noticed with this one, all right, the biggest thing that I noticed was a fun little concept that I think a lot of people who don't do backgrounds too often or do backgrounds and are just starting out, right, might not really think about. Is a fun little idea that I don't like to call it that. It is genuinely called that. It's proportion. Now, proportion is very important when it comes to drawing anything. And proportions are not exclusively for characters. They are also for objects, and they are for things within a scene. Alright, and a big thing that gets lost when drawing things in proportions drawing things in perspective are proportions. Now, the biggest thing that I noticed right here is this little AC unit right here. Now, when we are drawing something in perspective, we need to account for that thing being squashed. And when we are drawing, say, people in perspective, right, we are used to calling that, help me, it's foreshortening. We are used to calling that foreshortening, and foreshortening, again, is not only applied to people, it is applied to objects as well, right? So let's say, again, let's take this AC unit. Let's say that we are taking this AC unit in perspective, right? We have our vanishing point over here, right? Let's say that we draw the edge of this AC unit. Now, we are used to seeing that thing being pretty wide. So we're like, let's make our second, let's do this in 2-point perspective just so it's easier to do this demo. Right, let's say that we have one side of the AC unit here. Vertical, bring that back down. Alright, let's say that we have our AC unit. We're used to that thing being pretty long, so we make it as long as we're used to seeing, and then we add in our elements on the AC unit, and we're like, alright, sweet, I'm good. Right? But the problem is that we are not accounting for foreshortening, and we're not accounting for this perspective. Right? And it's the same thing with these windows here, right? Because by drawing it in this perspective, we are kind of seeing that this building is like, if we have the window, if I'm drawing this top down, let's say that we have the window right here that this lovely character is sitting up against. By having these be this wide and this AC unit be this wide, we're kind of drawing it as if we are looking at this other wall and it's placed like this. Right? Which I assume is not what we were hoping for, right? If the top of the building is here, it's kind of like it is curving inwards onto that window, right? Which is probably not what we were going for. We were probably going for something more like this, right? The building is just right next to us, right? Right next to us, or it's like here-ish, right? I assume that that's probably what we're thinking of more, right? So what we need to account for then is this in proportion. If we are drawing this AC unit as if it is in proportion to that window, we're probably going to have to squash it down. And that includes the elements on the AC unit itself, making them more squashed, because that is what we are hoping for. Actually, that might have looked better if it was like this. There we go. Like that. There we go. Right? We want our elements on our AC unit to be more squashed, because it is getting more squashed. Alright, so the biggest thing over here is drawing this thing as if it is being squashed. A really, really common one that I see when people don't draw these things with proper proportions is like they're just starting out, single vanishing point here, and they draw all their buildings doing this kind of magic. Right? And then they have one building here that's supposed to just be a normal, like, grocery mart, and then they draw in their windows really wide like this. And then they have like one door and then another window that's super wide, and this is their like house. Right? And it's like, whoa, that's a really wide window. Right? That's kind of going crazy. It's like a kaleidoscope almost, right? But in proportion, what we want, so if I do one on the side here, if we want this to be more proportionate, we're actually going to squeeze all of these windows to make them look visually thinner. Make them look a little bit thinner, because the closer that we get to a vanishing point, the more things recede, right? So they will get smaller. Right, so this feels a little bit more accurate by comparison to the other one. Right? Very, very similar concepts. So we just need to think about our foreshortening with objects as well as with our people. Right? And I'm not sure if you meant to make this, but we can also think about people as well. I'm not sure if you meant to make this window really big, right? Because if this person stood up, this window is about as tall as this character, right? A very, very large window if we envision them just kind of standing here, right? But that's totally fine if you wanted a really big window, right? Keys here, perfectly proportioned if we look at them versus like the hand. Whoops. If we look at them versus the hand over here, right? These keys fit in the hand. Great. Right? Oh no, I can't remember the name of this weapon. It's not the katana one, is it? Am I fried? I can't remember. I haven't... The Inkatana. I haven't played Splatoon in so long. Regardless, right? The Splatana. Is it the Splatana? I don't think so. I don't think so, because it's not like a stamper. Artist in chat, help me. It is the Splatana. It's the Splatana wiper. Okay. But yeah. Perfect, because again, if we've imagined this next to the Splatoon character, right? It is the correct size, right? So all the objects actually within this room are perfectly well and done. It is the stuff on the outside of the window that's getting a little bit wonky there, but that's totally fine. All right. Other nitpicky things, I think I would have to say, right? The artist being in chat means that I can ask the artist directly questions, which is great. Lovely artist in chat. This is Julie. Lovely Julie. This right here. I assume this is not part of the window. This is the tracks that the train are on, I think? Is this what we're looking at right here? Like, these are the tracks for the train that takes you to the city, if I remember correctly. Love the blinds. I also love the blinds. I thought this is a very nice touch up here. Just waiting for a reply. Train tracks, yes. Fantastic. Okay. Now the problem with this is that what's happening here is you have actually created an unintentional kind of tangent almost. Not a tangent per se, but the objects are getting a little bit lost. Now the fact that the train tracks align up perfectly with these buildings back here makes it almost feel like this is an entirely different platform. What else is happening here is with this texture down here, it's kind of like cutting it in half and makes it almost feel like there's supposed to be water here or some kind of separation with the horizon back here. Right? Because, as well, what's going on here is it is also very, very close in value to our window, right? So it is also a little bit unclear whether this is part of the window or it is something else. So what I might do is I would probably push it down a little bit more. Either push it down or push it up. Actually, I might push it up. I might push this up because what that would do... Let's see if I can find a brush that's kind of similar to this. Let's use this one. Let's use this one. Yeah. What I might do is I might push this entire train track up a little bit so I can really help these buildings feel like more their own thing. Okay, I'm not gonna do this perfect because I don't have this thing's layers. So like, let's make these buildings more their own thing. I can see a little bit of the top of the building there, so this is meant to be like that. For those wondering, this is what I do with my students' work, like, every week. Like, is I'm like, let's take a look-see here. Let's, like, just try and find a brush that is close enough to what the original was. Let's draw over and try and show them what I mean. Alright, let's get this in here as well. I like this little pole here. I think that's fun. Alright, let's keep that. Right? The pole was also right in line with the tracks, but that's probably just like a support beam of some kind. So let's say, let's move these upwards a bit. Right, and keep all of them this darker purple. Now if we move them upwards, gonna make them a bit funky looking. We could also just move the top of this building down. It's also something we can do. It does kind of make them look closer, but I kind of like that because then what happens is it creates an almost like difference in like heights and the levels of the objects, the things in the scene. And I think that that creates a nice variety. Right, but now by making the train tracks their own sort of thing, right now it feels more like an actual object rather than possibly part of the window, right? You can add this back in here too if you'd like. You'd even add some like visual difference as well if you made these like that too. Oh, also by making this have an edge light, you're gonna want the light to be in the direction of your light source. So your light source is the sun down here, so you're gonna want this edge lighting to actually be on the bottom. So it is pointed towards the sun itself. Right? And now this kind of feels like its own thing by comparison to like it being slightly more misconstrued with the window. Yeah, you could add height to this building on the left, or you could make it go down more. Like if you wanted to just do that, like just make it higher up here. That could also be good. For sure, like that. Yeah, that's way better. Right? So now it feels like two separate sections, right? So now this feels a little bit nicer, right? And like if you wanted it to be a little bit less mergy with the... Oh! Oopsies. That's still in the gradient. If you wanted it to be slightly less mergy with the... like... window, you can lighten it just a smidge up more as well. So that you can keep this windowsill... You actually can make this black. Because then... Oh, some of it's black and some of it's not. I see. Yeah, you might, because this is like all in shadow, you actually might want to make this all black. It might actually look a lot nicer if you just keep all of this black. Right? There we go. Because then now there's like a proper visual differentiation between it all. Right? And now that like lighting feels a little bit stronger in that regard as well. Right? We also have like edge lighting for this train, so we probably want edge lighting for the rest of the buildings as well. Again, in the direction of the sun. Alright, so we have that same sort of visual information throughout all of it. Alright? Okay. Fantastic. Similar idea to the other, some of the other ones as well, right? We have this lovely character and they're not sitting on any of the focal points. So a couple things we could do. A is we could crop it in, have them on one of the focal points like this. I actually automatically like that more. Like if we do this magic, that feels a little bit stronger composition wise. You could move them... You can have a really funky composition. I love funky compositions. If you move it down like this, really thin that out. This feels really cool. It's kind of banner-esque. I think that that's really neat as well. All right, because right now we have this really, really open space and we have the one window directly in the center and then we have like this focal point kind of off to the side, right? So we could really make this a little more closed in, really emphasize this character. Another way you could do it is just add some space around this side here, but then that would make the composition feel a bit too big, I think. So you could really, really crop this in some more, and I think that it would really help. Yeah, just like that. Oh, that was so cool, right? We enhance this in right here, and we have, like, our main focus kind of making an almost like L shape around these 2 points. And then we have our sun getting pretty close to one of the focal points as well. This is really, really cool too, right? If you want that more illustration-y way of working. But yeah. All right, everybody claps. Everybody say thank you. Everybody say thank you to Julie for submitting her lovely work. Thank you for being brave. We love the piece. And we appreciate you. Juli, Juli. Everybody clap, say thank you. I just want to draw banner art. I do a lot of, like, starting soons and, like, banners and stuff for streamers. It's fun. Yes, everybody say thank you. This was a lovely piece. All right. The next piece that we are going to be working with. Oh, this is the midway point. So this is where I will say to all the artists who have submitted, if you are still here, if you want the copy of the working file after this is said and done, this is the one time where I will allow you to head into my DMs. If you would like to ask me for this working file, I will very gladly send this to you by the end of stream. So if any of the artists who are being featured today would like the working files for their pieces, you absolutely may have them. I save every single one, so if you would like any of them, feel free to reach out and I will gladly grab those for you. Made me so happy. I'm glad. Alright, this next artist that we have is TIJ. TIJ, his YouTube is SimplyDoodled. SimplyDoodled, but yes, this is the artist TIJ. I'll be going over his work next. Now, he had a few pieces. I was like, there was like 6 or something. And I was like, I think, yeah, if you can't get a hold of her, then contact one of the mods, and the mods will yoink me. But yes, this next artist, TIJ, he had like 6 pieces, I think, and I was like, I want to take a look at this one. Because I'm like, I feel like there is a lot that I could say about this one. There were a few that I think I could say a lot about, but this one I think would be the most helpful for everyone. Because not only can I talk about the actual backgrounds themselves, but I can talk about the rendering. So this one specifically, I could say the theater. Yeah, there were like 4 different ones that were like theater based. They were theater based. They were all like in a theater, and I was like, interesting. I'm like, I assume these are like assets for something. So let's get going on this one. Now, what's interesting about this is a couple things that I can talk about immediately. Now, when we illustrate things, it is very, very important that we actually, like, understand, like, when we are drawing something in perspective, or when we are drawing a room, not only are we drawing it from one angle, but we need to understand how that would look like, how it would look like from other angles as well, right? And what we are putting down implies different information, right? This hallway here, right? If we take a look at this, first of all, this is a tall room, right? The average door is about 6'6", right? So if this is a 6'6" door, we have another 6'6" of space up here, right? Some more proportioning that you might want to think about, right? So this is like a 13-foot tall hallway, which I assume a backstage is not 13 feet tall, but I could be wrong. But immediately with this back room here, right? Jumbo room. It is super jumbo, right? With this here, what I was assuming what was going on was that the room is meant to be a hallway, right? And this was just a little hallway that leads out to here. However, these little bars here imply, if we continue this one here, this implies that the room actually continues to here. So there's a little more space in this room that we cannot see. Oops. It is probably more like this. Oh, higher. Like that. No, lower. I'm too lazy to pull my... There we go. Right? The room actually continues out like this, which then also means that the height of the room, you know, immediately you can see how big this room actually is meant to be. Right? That is a tall, tall room. Right? So it actually feels like this room should continue out to over here. But this tangent with the corner of this edge right here would tell us otherwise. And that is why tangents in perspective are so dangerous, because they can imply two separate things and create these weird optical illusions. So if this room is meant to be a bit wider on this side, really, really easy solution is we just make it shorter. So now this properly feels like a hallway. This probably feels like a room rather than a hallway, right? Because now there's a wall over here and a ceiling that is not complete, right? And we're like, okay, this is like a whole other room on this section, right? It is not necessarily just like a hallway. This is meant to be a whole other room. Other things as well. When we are shading walls, when we are shading walls, and we are shading anything that is a flat surface, right, we approach it differently than when we approach something that is like curved, right? When we are approaching something that is flat, we shade it differently than we would shade something that is curved, right? Let's pretend that we are shading a cylinder versus a cube. Right? Let's say our light source is coming from here, right? If we have, oh, sorry, let's say that the light source is coming from here, right? If we have our light coming from this side, right, we'll probably have this side of the cube, this side of the cylinder be really, really light, the other side of the cylinder be pretty dark, right? So let's just do something kind of, that kind of sucks, but it'll get the point across. So we have our shadow on this side, right? Because it is darker. Oh. There we go. Our shadow was going to be on this side. Because our light source is coming from over here, right? And because this is a curved surface, right? The light curves around this. This soft shadow implies that there is a curve going around this area, right? On the cube, by comparison, these are flat edges. So we're actually going to be shading in something that is a little closer to cell shading, right? These perfectly flat sort of shaded edges, right? It's a little bit different by comparison to something that is curved, right? So the airbrush is not going to be our best friend if we are shading everything, right? So we want to change the way that we shade depending on what it is that we are working with, right? So this room, using one sort of like airbrush and just airbrushing in a circle around here does not actually work that well because we have harsh edges that would tell us otherwise. So if we have light coming in from over here, right, this back wall is actually going to be taking up the most light because it's like, imagine if you shined a flashlight on somebody against a wall, right? That wall that they're standing against is going to take up the most light, and the walls on either side of them are going to take less light because that light is not as direct on it. Right, so this is actually going to be taking up the most light. And this wall is kind of shoved off to the side, so, and like it's also going to be hidden behind another wall. So this is actually going to take up less light over here. Does this mean that you can't do gradients on sharp edges? Of course not. You probably should, actually. And then this one is going to take up the second most light here. What's happening here? Oh, I see. Let's fix that. This is probably going to take up the second most amount. Right? Of course the shadows are going to be, like, you can add gradients and whatever to these edges, but again, because these are sharp edges, the way that you approach shading them is going to be different for each side. So, let's take this side, for example. This corner is going to be hidden. Again, remember, this is a room. So this corner is kind of hidden off to the side. So we're actually going to make this a bit darker over here. On this side, like that. But we're going to approach this ceiling differently because it's heading towards the stage. So it's actually going to get a lot more light. Like this, as we head closer to the stage, right? And automatically this feels a lot different and a little bit better, right? Because now it sort of feels more like a room is being shaded because we are accounting for these harsh edges. The thing where you create a line by linking a point to B, is it a feature? So how are you doing with the lines of the vanishing point? Yeah, so shift, yeah, CSP does have it. If you hold shift, it'll also show you the whole line. It depends what program you use as well. I know Photoshop, if you hold shift without drawing anything, there we go. If you hold shift without drawing anything first, you can make automatic, like, vertical and horizontal lines. But if you start clicking around by holding shift, you can create these little lines as well. Okay. Other things that we want to note when we are shading something, again, our airbrush is not always going to be our friend. We want to make sure that we are also accounting for the shape of the object that is meant to be casting a shadow, right? The shape of our shadow and the softness of our shadow is dependent on proximity and on, you know, dependent on proximity and how big the object is and how close and far our light source is to the actual object. I want you guys to do something for me, alright? I asked you to do this in, like, a video, but I'm gonna ask you to do it now as well. Live stream, live, wow. What I want you guys to do is I want you to take, like, a phone or a flashlight or something, right? And what you are going to do is you are going to hold that light over top of your desk or whatever it is that you are sitting at with your hand on top of your desk or something, right? You're going to hold that light over top of your hand. Now, your hand, you are going to move it closer to the light source and back down to the desk. And you are going to look at how your shadow changes, right? You are going to look at how that shadow changes. Now, you notice that the closer your hand gets to the light source, the bigger and less defined that shadow gets. The closer your hand gets to your desk, the sharper and smaller that shadow becomes, right? It's not always soft. Your shadows are not always going to look soft. Sometimes they're actually quite sharp-edged. So, these really soft shadows around this curtain, what this is implying is that this is just a whole other sheet of paper that is completely flat that I'm just holding over top of this initial thing, right? And that's probably not what we're going for. So let's sharpen up these shadows a bit. All right. Let's sharpen up these shadows a bit. If we wanted to create that, actually, we can get rid of this one because we also need to think of our light source, right? Where is this light coming from? And based on the majority of this, it feels like it is like a top-down shadow. So we're actually not really going to have many shadows on the sides of this, but we might have it underneath like that. is hopefully pretty close to the wall. So you can create something that looks a little bit more like this. And same deal down here. Ooh, this is going to be complicated. Alright, let's do some magic here really quickly. Perfect. Okay. Right, these shadows are going to be much more defined over here as the curtain hits the ground. Like that. Again, I don't have these layers, so normally what would be here are the layers, but I can't use those. So, we're going with this. Boom! Automatically, that looks way better. If we have something that is, you know, heading straight down, we have a shadow that feels more defined, right? This should actually be, I would make this a little bit more like... like that, kind of, yeah. And a more defined shadow implies something a little bit different by comparison to if there was no defined shadow at all. And you can do the same thing on the curtain here as well. You do something similar on the curtain where the more that it falls, oops, the more that it falls, the difference in shadow becomes more apparent. Right, sharp against each other, but not so sharp as it falls down the side of the curtain. Right, so that creates a different feeling on the curtain itself as well. Your shadows should also try to help enhance the forms of what it is that you are illustrating, right? So these curtains, right, are, you can imagine almost like a bunch of tubes sort of on each other. So you want to enhance the fact that there are ripples on these curtains. So by doing this, maybe. We enhance that a little bit more. Right, there are lots of different little shading tricks that you can do to make your forms. You see that, you can fill that out, right? Before, after, right? Filling those out really makes a difference. Because your shadows, again, are meant to enhance the forms that you are trying to create. Right, so by, you know, enhancing these, like, curves, enhancing, like, the forms of the curtain, you know, moving, and creating those almost pipes, right, you can feel the difference in the curtain. Oops. There's also a little bit of inconsistent styling here, where these have like colored line work and this one does not, so we want to make sure that we are staying consistent with that as well, because there is more uncolored line work. We're gonna go with that, so let's reline this. Just a little bit. Right, and that makes it feel a little bit better within the scene as well. Right, curtains. Right, and there's just all these little enhancing things that we can do, right? Again, before, after, you can see the difference in the curtain and the ground versus before, right? Especially if we have, again, top-down lighting. But we want to keep track of where our light source is coming from. I gave it top-down lighting, but maybe that wasn't what you were going for. But, depends on the person. But alright! Everybody say thank you. Everybody say thank you to TIJ for submitting. Well done. Everybody claps. Claps say thank you, and we're proud of you, and thank you for being brave for submitting your work. Well done to the artist, and we appreciate you. All right. Home stretch. We've got the last two here. Yes, thank you and good job. This second to last ones, this is by Mumu. Such a cute name. This is Mumu. Her name is vsmumu everywhere, according to her. Let's actually double check that. Let's see if I can pick out some of the social medias. She kind of just said vsmumu everywhere. Yes, please. I would like to take a look at the spreadsheet. Yeah. On Webtoon, Twitch, and Twitter, vsmumu. vsmumu is her handles. We can just call her Mumu. This is a very sweet one. I love underwater things. Which is very funny because I don't like going underwater. But I love the idea of an underwater cafe. I think this is so cute. Miss Momo. It's VS, if you can see it up here. vsmumu. 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 Right? I love, so fun and so fresh, right? I love this underwater thing. Also very smart of you to just do like a monochromatic thing so you don't have to worry about color, right? But I love underwater cafes. I love underwater things. I think it is so fun. And I love this orca. I love the idea of a winery and cafe just under the water that you're just vibing with. I think it's great. I think this is fun. Alright. I want that next Animal Crossing game to have an aquarium cafe. Real! I loved going to the museum with friends. It's just so fun. I had my museum. I finished the bugs. And I got really close to finishing the fish. And I really did not fill the art museum out much. It was very difficult because, like, you know, Red came once a week in New Horizons. And I was just like, oh, right. Alright. All fun and games till a shark orders you and breaks through. Jokes. Alright. First immediate thing that I am noticing with this one, again, if we talk about proportion. Now, again, proportion is not only for people, it is for areas too. Alright, and the first thing that I am noticing is look at how little these chairs are, and look at how big this rug is. So you're telling me that this is all complete open space, and a person is really only going to be about this big. Right? And there's no seats at the bar, nothing. So there's a lot of empty space going on here, right? If we took another person, kind of placed them in here, right? Same size as the other guy, right? That's a lot of space that's just kind of open, right? So we want to think about again, ways that we can maybe fill in that space or just get rid of it, right? And one of those ways is you can just crop this. I think that this piece would actually be a lot stronger. I'm actually gonna do one with this one where I'm gonna it's flattened already. Let's copy this and let's do this magic. There we go. I think this piece would actually be a lot stronger if you just took this and did this. Boom! Instantly, right? Now we don't have too much space, right? It doesn't feel too empty, and now we can focus on this big, beautiful underwater operation going on, and these couple little chairs and this one little thing right here, right? And it doesn't feel so empty with this bottom space right here. If you wanted to keep in this rug area, though, let's say you wanted to actually keep this in, maybe there are other things that you want to put in here. Maybe then we want to put in more tables, right? We've got these cute little tables going on, right? These are like bar stool tables though. What about actual tables, right? Where that can seat more than like 2 people, right? Maybe you've got like these kind of tables going on, right? Maybe not exclusively like this. Maybe you want like ones that seat like 4. Again, following the proportions of these chairs as well. This table's too big if we want to seat 4. Let's make it smaller. Get a couple of 4-seater tables. Right, this is a cafe. Maybe you want some tables here. Another fun thing that you could do is, again, it is a cafe, so instead of like dining seating, right, because this is very like dining seating kind of things, what you could do is you could have fun little like almost faux booths like that. Have these tables going on. These kind of booths. And again, it creates like almost like a divider in a way where you have these like booths and tables. It creates a divider down the center, so it creates almost like hallways, and it makes up a better use of the space that you have going on here, right? So that's one way that you could do that, right? Another way, I should have been keeping all of these. I'm realizing now, I doodled these and then I got rid of them. I should just hide, make a new layer. There we go. Right, and then maybe you want dining seating, maybe like that. Or maybe this super bright, super empty space is intentional. Maybe then it's like a dance floor or something like that, right? In which that case, then you need to make that more obvious. And this is when we bring in our visual storytelling, right? We just have a rug here, nothing else, right? So maybe if this is meant to be like a dance floor of some kind, maybe then we could have like a DJ table here or something, right? And we can have like a turntable here, and there's like speakers and whatever, right, that are kind of going off here. So we understand that this is meant to be more like a dance floor, right? And we can actually cut this area out more. And maybe with the perspective, we can have some more dining seating here, like some more 2-seater. These are closer, so we want these to be bigger. Right, so maybe we have more seating on this side. So it's like there's like a dance floor around us. Right, that kind of thing. That could also be fun. Right? So that's another way that you could go about it. Right? But the biggest thing that I'm noticing outside of like this super empty space and everything like that, another really big thing I'm noticing is that this rug is actually not quite working in perspective. Now, for those who do not know how to draw a circle in perspective, there is actually a way. It's complicated, but there is one way. All right? What you want to do, so let's say we have a vanishing point. We're going to draw a square. our vanishing point, right? As square as we can get. Right? And again, we need to account for proportion. So of course, this is going to be flat on the ground. So our square is going to look a little bit flatter, a little squashed. You do is you connect these corners. You draw another line in perspective going through that cross section. And then another one going through that cross section. And all of these diagonal lines, you're going to have your circle intersect at the third line. You're going to break up these lines into thirds. And again, you need to account for the perspective, right? So a third here, a third here, a third is here, approximately. And then you want the other sides of the circle to be hitting those lines that touch the edges. And that is your circle in perspective. A little complicated, yes, but that is, if you really wanted to measure it out, you can, right? I tend to just eyeball it, but it is dependent on the person, right? So again, if you have, this is the horizon line, if you are looking up, follow the curve of your eye. All curves above the horizon line will curve upwards. Follow the curve of your eye. If you are looking down, all curves below the horizon line curve downwards. But if we have a rug like this, right, of course it is going to be, you know, flat on the ground, so you can't have these designs on the rug as if this rug is flat on the wall, right? In a nutshell, pizza, essentially. Right? You can't have this as if it is, you know, like if you've ever seen those illusions where somebody draws like a hole on the ground, right? And like they take a picture and it's like, whoa, it looks like there's a hole on the street, right? If you walked up to that thing, right? Let's say they have like oh, there's a hole, it's on like the street, right? And it looks like that when you take a picture, but if you walked up, that hole probably looks more like that, right? And it actually isn't like, oh, of course it's not a hole, but it's an optical illusion, right? So if we want something to look like it is in perspective, I'm going to draw this pattern again over here. We need to account for that perspective on this, right? So the center of the rug is not going to be the center of this shape. It's going to be higher up. We notice that this part of this weird pizza is... Hello? Oh. We notice that this part of this weird pizza is shorter than this part. This part is much longer, right? So we flatten this out. I should look at this more. Okay, I see. Sorry, I don't know why that was so complicated for me. You're going to account for it as if it is flat on the ground. And that can be kind of complicated. So, especially if we're working digitally, easiest way to do it, draw it flat on here. Squiggly lines. You're gonna take this, you're gonna move it over here, shrink it down. You're going to adjust based on the perspective. little anchor points you can use here. Boom. Now it's in perspective, right? So that is one way that you could do it, right? Of course, you could also just do it by hand, right? But you need to account for this distortion that is going to be happening over here. Right? Outside of filling in this space, right? I think another thing that could really benefit this background, a floor pizza, indeed. Pencil can't do that trick. That's true, which is why then you have to do it by hand. Where again, the biggest thing that you need to remember is that everything that goes towards the vanishing point will recede. So, the closer it gets to the vanishing point, the smaller it will get. Right? Really easy way to also try it out is use a grid. Right? Draw down a grid and then draw your patterns within it. Or maybe you want a checker. Maybe you just want a checker. And that's also fun. Right? The greatest thing about the previous piece as well is you had a lot of like floorboards, so that really helps enhance your perspective. Out of curiosity, are there any other instances where you can ignore or break perspective rules? Experimental pieces, probably. Like if you are trying to do something that is more accurate, then you would do that. If you wanted something more experimental, of course you can break that. Look at Van Gogh. I don't think a single one of Van Gogh's pieces are perfectly in perspective. But like if you want something that is more concept arty, if you want something that's more industry standard, you're gonna have to keep it within those rules. But if you want something more like gallery work, something more fine artsy, of course you can break it. Who cares? Van Gogh never breaks any rules. What? He broke like all the rules. But yeah, there's lots of different reasons why you would want to break perspective rules. But like all in all, like more often than not, like you kind of want to stick with them if you are hoping to do something more concept arty. Yeah, another big thing about this one that I'm kind of noticing is that you kind of have a lack of, like, weirdly enough, you have a slight lack of visual interest. Now, I am thinking with this one, you need a lot more, like, visual enhancers, right? You've got a couple tables here with a cute little light in it, and then a funky rug, and that's about it, right? There's not a lot telling me that this is an adult cafe and winery. There's nothing telling me that this is a winery, right? Maybe you want a bar back here with, you know, like, this is not in perspective, but if you maybe you want a bar back here with like different like bottles and whatever, like there's glasses and whatever hanging from up here. Maybe you have like a bartender or whatever, right? Maybe there is like, you know, like display cases showing off, like, you know, if it's a cafe, maybe you want to show off some of like the pastries that are available. Maybe you want, you know, that kind of thing, right? There's a very heavy lack of visual storytelling, right? We can kind of tell that it's a cafe just based off of these, right? But the really only thing that's telling us that's really the only thing that's telling us that this is a cafe and winery, right? We want more in here. There needs to be more that tells us what is going on, right? Yeah, we have this big, beautiful, like, ocean-y thing going on here, but not much else. Like, if we have it, like, ocean-y, I'm like, maybe we want, like, a more ocean-y pattern just on this, right? Maybe it's, like, brain coral. Fish. Alright? This isn't an actual, like, aquarium, but maybe you want, like, some kind of, like, pattern like that going on there, right? Maybe, like, I love these cute little, like, holes in the back of the chair, but, like, maybe you want them to be, like, fish instead, right? So that it, like, makes it feel more aquarium-y, right? Maybe you have fun little themed tables. Maybe you have, you know, it's like there's kind of just a bit of a lack of anything going on. And, like, that's what makes a background interesting, is our visual storytelling that tells us, like, hey, this is what's going on at this place. take a look and like get interested in the scenery, right? When we look at a background, we look for those little like pieces that tell us what was going on. Those little pieces that tell us like, hey, this is what this place is. It's like, you want to take a look? It's like, you want to go here, right? And that is what we are really looking for with backgrounds. Reason number one, perspective is boring and I'm lazy. I love perspective. I think I started loving perspective once I got into it. Like, once I started doing it more, I was like, okay, this kind of rules. Because then it starts to really, like, feel, like, satisfying when you get it right. It's one of those things as well, like, the more you train your eye for it, the better you get without, like, doing it without any perspective lines, right? I can kind of draw, like, a full, like, background of, like, a city without any, like, perspective lines. Like, 3-point is not too difficult for me anymore. And that is genuinely just because, again, I got kind of used to it. And it, like, became, like, something that just ended up being really, really fun, right? So the more that you draw perspective, the better that you get doing it by eye. And that's when stuff starts to get a little bit less complicated. And you can really, really have fun with it over time as well, right? Drawing things in perspective gets more fun the more you do it. But alright, everybody claps. Everybody say thank you to Mumu for submitting her work, for being brave, and giving us a chance to see her lovely work. Everybody say thank you. Sketch perspective is cool, but the line art is so boring. I love eyeball sketching. The cleanup is I don't mind the cleanup. I think because as well I've gotten into doing messier line work. I think like the cleanup is actually quite fun. Thank you, Momo. All right. This last one. My voice is kind of going here. This last one is by Lori. I love this one. This one is so fun. This one is an example of like, yeah, there's perspective, but like, especially because a lot of things are curved, you can kind of let a lot of things go, right? And this one is super fun. This one is by Lori. Her Tumblr is alien-charmies, alien-charmies. She was in chat a while ago. It's a shame she isn't here anymore. Pain! I'm so sorry, artist that was in chat. I think I'd like line art a lot more if I was faster with it. It took me months to finish the lines of an isometric building. I understand, yeah. I mean, you use CSP, don't you, Quinn? It goes crazy. Hi, Crow! Everybody point at Scarecrow sketch and say perceived. But yeah, this one is beautiful. You do. Okay, you could use the perspective ruler. Like, if you already figure out the perspective, like, sketching it is perfectly fine. If you get the sketch in, you can just do cleanup with the perspective ruler. Should be a lot easier, I think, than just doing it by hand. Remind me, I'll show you how to do it sometime. You hate the perspective ruler? I use it for everything. No. The perspective ruler rocks. It's so easy. I freehand things because I hate myself. No, I use the perspective ruler all the time. It really helps with speed. Like, especially if I have to do like a big piece. It's like, it works really well. But okay. This one is really funny because I actually don't have a lot to say in terms of the perspective. Because again, it's curved. You can kind of ignore it. You've got some good proportion going on here, right? This person's far away, so they seem smaller. This one's closer to us, so they seem a little bit bigger, right? If this is how big they are compared to their whole ship, that's great. That's totally fine, right? And this seems about realistic to me. If you look at the satellite, it's far away. It's a pretty good size compared to the people, right? Of course, they're not right up next to it, so it's smaller because satellite dishes are like this big. But it's far away, so that's totally fine. Right? And I love this rendering on Earth, or whatever planet this is. I love this rendering. I think it's so fun. I think it makes my line art feel unnatural used for isometric work because it's very conceptual, but after actual perspective, I prefer to freehand. Interesting. I like the perspective ruler because it allows me to keep in my, what do you call it? Allows me to keep in my, my line weighting. I'll show you one that I did with a perspective ruler. I'll show you a couple that I did with my perspective ruler. There's this one, and then this is a school one that I used it for because I had to do the whole thing in one night. That was my fault though. And this one. Right? These two are both with perspective ruler. And what I like with it is just like, it's like, you know, I was able to keep in my like roughness of the lines. It was great. Just hate line art, that's fair. I am a lover of line art. I love line art to death. No, babe. Sulavu or whatever they say. But okay, biggest things that I have to say about this one. I've seen the infinite zoom. Oh yes, I've seen those. The biggest thing that I have to say about this one is essentially just the lighting. I think that the lighting can be adjusted. And that's only because right now, if I zoom all the way out, right, it is a little bit tricky to tell where the Earth ends and where that spaceship starts, right? It's a little bit tough, right? And that's just because of the values that we have going on here, right? I'm totally fine with edge lighting going on here, but I think we can make this side of this darker. If I darken to this whole thing going on here, these guys back up. Darken up all the areas that are not like glass or facing the Earth directly. Right, first of all, it makes the silhouette feel way cooler if we have like all this darkness going on here. We can also lighten it up on the people as well. Oh, whoops. Lighten it up on our characters a little bit here. So they can have a bit of edge lighting to them as well. So we can define their forms too. Not on this one though, because they're stuck in the void over here. Oh, actually, no, we can cheat a little. It's like we can do this just a smidge. Helps give us an idea, right? This feels a lot stronger, right? Again, we zoom out, we can see the difference in these two forms really, really easily. Let's actually give like a proper, like, lit edge to these guys, right? So I can really help amp up the drama of the piece. When I say drama, I don't necessarily mean like dramatics in pose or dramatics in that. Drama is just making a piece feel more intense. Whether that is lighting or pose or whatever. In this case, it is just lighting, right? But that drama, again, really adds to, like, highlighting the forms of these characters, and they make them pop a little bit more, right? Feels a lot stronger in that way. Love the way it looks, just wish it didn't take so long. That'll get better with time, though. Yeah, 100%. Gonna PNG tube some Minecraft. Nice! Have you set up your new PNG tuber yet? Right, and I think that looks a lot nicer in terms of, like, you know, building up that kind of form, right? It helps with the lighting difference. There are some other fancy things that you could do, right? With this glass here, you could have, like, a bounce light almost going on that interacts with the light that's going on behind them, because this is, like, you know, space. This is an area where I think, like, an airbrush could have been good, especially right here, right? Edges, edge lighting in general, right? When you have, like, these really bright sort of edge lights, if you add a glow sort of bouncing off of them without width, you can feel that difference as well there. Really feels like these guys are lighting up a little bit and really being affected by the light. Really helps enhance that a little bit. And these are the things that I would use the airbrush for. It's just, like, enhancing, like, some of that lighting a bit more. It makes them really, like, affect the source of light here. Some lighting here because these guys are just glowing in general. Again, enhancing the drama of the piece without width. Gotta love playing with blend mode. So true. Hi, Oz. Hi. That's okay. Right, enhance that, like, dramatics of the piece that's going on, right? I also think that these this text is a little too close to the top of the canvas. You're getting a bit, what do you call it? How? You're getting a bit of a tangent right here. So let me just clone stamp that out of the way. No, I'm not. I'm just gonna brush it out of the way. I'm just gonna use the brush. It's easier. It's faster. There we go. Sorry if I'm starting to talk less. My voice is actually starting to go a little. So it's hurting a little bit. So I'm like, okay, I should slow down a little bit. Love this person style. Very storybook. No, I love it. It's very nice. This is really cool. But yeah, this one I think just needs a little bit more drama. I think in my eyes, 90% of, like, art in general are the final touches. And, like, I think, like, if you spend enough time on your final touches, like, your piece ends up looking like 20 times better. Again, let's enhance the drama of this one some more. We darken up this shadow even more as it faces away from the earth, right? Again, give it that smidge of a vignette. I think looks pretty cool. We can bring some of these characters back a little bit, like giving them a bit of bounce light. Maybe this yellow down here is kind of reaching this person here. You can give them a bit of that light from that. And this one, maybe we just have a little bit of edge lighting that way, so they get enhanced just a smidge. right? Just to make them a little bit more apparent right there as well. Aren't we featured the live streams? Thank you for your input. Of course! Everyone point! Artist in chat! Artist is in chat. Tangent? Yeah. So tangents are not only with tangents are not exclusively with like parts of the illustration. Tangents can also be with the edge of your canvas. So if you are working with something that is like gets a little bit too close, like if you are drawing somebody and they're like and they are standing like right here, oops, on the canvas per se, like say they're like right here and they're getting really close to that edge, this is a tangent with the edge of your canvas. You can even do that if you have, like, you can accidentally do a tangent as well if you have somebody whose like arm is right there, the inner crook of the elbow is like touching the edge of the canvas. That is also a tangent, right? So gotta be careful with that kind of stuff. Take my little cat tavern. Thank you so much for your advice. Of course, another artist in chat. Oh my god. We got so many artists in chat right now. Thank you for submitting. Thank you for showing me your lovely art. Found artists I really like purposely use tangents in their art. Super geometric and trippy. I love it. I also really, here's the chat. You want to know secret? Want to know secret? You can use everything that you are not supposed to do so long as you know how to work without them. Tangents are one of those things you can just feel, like you look at the canvas, the line automatically jumps out. Oh, 100%. Right? Every single thing that you are not supposed to do in art, you can actually use to your advantage so long as you already know how to work without them. Right? And that's because they're not necessarily things that you can't do, they are things you should avoid, right? Tangents are one of those things. Weird compositions love to use tangents. I love to use tangents to my advantage. And the reason why the people say like, oh, don't use tangents is because they cause tension. Maybe you want to use that tension to your advantage. Perhaps you do. And that's kind of the thing that you can do, right? There's a lot of empty space in panels is what I've been talking about recently. It's like, oh, there's so much empty space going on in a lot of these. You can use that to your advantage too. Maybe you want that empty feeling. Maybe you want this place to feel like strangely loose and like strangely like uninhabited, and that is up to you, right? But you need to learn why that's a problem in a lot of other cases before you can use it in a case where it is totally fine. Don't shade with black, don't use tangents, don't use super distorted perspective. I do what I want, I love breaking rules and proving people wrong. Again, it is one of those things where you need to learn how to work without it if you are going to use it in the future, right? So you need to know why they say don't use tangents, don't shade with black, don't use distorted perspective, right? You need to know why people say that before you go, okay, well, I'm actually choosing to do this, and here is why. It's like, I understand why this wouldn't be good in other places, but this is why I'm doing it here, right? Shading with black is one of those things. It's like, the reason why you don't shade with black is because A, it desaturates a lot of your color, and B, because you can't get any darker than black, so it is hard to work with those kinds of values. But if you want that kind of stark, harsh look, then of course you're going to shade with black, right? If you want that kind of desaturated look, of course you're going to shade with black because you can, right? And it's very complicated to sort of grasp that, I think. So that's why usually I'm like, don't do this, don't do that, because it is, you know, you shouldn't for most of the time. It is only when you reach that level where you're like, okay, now we can get a little bit more into it, right? Okay, this one, I really didn't have a lot to say. There's just really minor things that I would change, right? If we got rid of all of these, returned back to like what it was initially, right? art is like especially with like finishing touches, like a lot of pieces just need just a little bit of extra going on, right? And this piece I think is no different, right? It was really, really good, but it just had a couple of things that I think could have been adjusted, right? And that is no different for this one. Oh, actually one more thing that you could totally do. If we took this. Oops, hang on. Get rid of this one. I think you could also do something really fun with this to again enhance the people in the composition. You added a bit of, like, a bit of focal difference. I think that could also help a ton. Here. This is going to be my last point. If you wanted to add a bit of focal difference, what you could really easily do, right? Oh, actually... you could really easily do filter, blur, Gaussian blur. So if you blurred the planet in the back just a little bit, look at that. Woo! That really helps that, like, perspective feel so much stronger, right? Look at that. Wow. I love short focal lengths. I think they can help a lot, right? Everything being in focus is a little bit busy. If you just defocused that planet and the things in the background a little bit more, it really gives a sense of it being farther away, right? And it really helps it feel like we are far away from the planet in the background. We are far in space, right? And it really helps give that kind of far away feeling, I think. All right, there's my last little bit. There we go. That's my last little thing that I'll say about this one. All right. But yes, all right. That is 5 o'clock. Thank you all so much for joining today. Everybody say thank you to Lori. Again, that is Lori. Her Tumblr is alien-charmies. Everybody say thank you. Oh, hi, Mumu. No, you're all good. Thank you for submitting. Everybody, artist in chat. But yes, thank you also so much for submitting your work. Thank you all for joining today. Everybody say thank you to the artists, every single artist that submitted. Again, if you were an artist that was featured today, if you would like the working file for your piece, you should just be able to DM me on Discord. If you would like the working file for your piece that was submitted, please let me know and I will gladly give that to you, so you can take a look at the changes that I made and whatnot. But yes, thank you all so much for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. I hope it was informative, and I hope that you had fun as well. But yeah, if you're new here, never seen us before, hey, hi, we're Blank Canvas, blankcanvas.com. Check out the classes that we offer. Next week is going to be the last week of our spring courses, which then we will be going into summer pretty soon. So be sure to check out the camps that are coming up in the summer, and then classes that might be running during the summer as well. We're not going to have any files that I'm going to be posting in the Discord today, but hey, if you want to chat with some people, join the Discord, the Blank Canvas Discord. Chat with other art nerds, submit your work for the usual weekly art submissions that are featured at the beginning of stream. And, hey, if you want working files, or if you want to be part of Discord Crits, the members chat where I hang out a lot more, check out our Patreon. Check out our Patreon and come and chat with some of the instructors, chat with some of the teachers, chat with some of the admin, you know, stuff like that. Come hang out with us. Come say hi. But all right. This Sunday, so tomorrow, you're going to be with Iggy. I believe you guys are going to be drawing some backgrounds. Pretty cool, pretty epic. So he's going to be... Oh, he's going to be drawing people in perspective. Sorry. He'll be drawing some people in perspective for you tomorrow. So you'll be joining him there, so you can learn how to do that. And then next week, Saturday and Sunday, you're going to get Josh, who is going to be both storyboarding and creating a character sheet for you guys. So he's going to teach you guys how to animate a sequence. But alright. Thank you all so much for... Oh, Discord crits! Yes, there's Discord crits as well if you're a member. Yeah! Epic. Cool and epic. But alright. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll see y'all in a couple of weeks. Au revoir! Bye-bye!